You're listening to Wise Women with Daisy Khan, where faith rolls up its sleeves as a force for good and where women define the future with wisdom and wonder. I'm Daisy Khan. Kindly subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Welcome to Wise Women with Daisy Khan. Today we're exploring something that touches every woman's life: her wealth, her money, her financial independence, which is also a reflection of her independence, dignity, and her faith. You may be surprised to learn that in Islam, a woman's financial autonomy wasn't a modern idea. It's actually a divine right granted in the Quran. 1400 years ago, women were given the right to earn, to own, and to spend their wealth freely. Yet, somewhere along the way, culture began to trump the religion itself. And gradually, what God had granted to women, society began to withhold from them. My guest today has spent more than 3 decades helping women and men rediscover that truth. Dr. Rabab Gomaa-Razik is a Chicago-based scholar of Islamic law, actually a PhD. She's the mother of four and is the author of this groundbreaking book. I'm going to hold it up for you: The Wealth of a Woman, Understanding Islamic Financial Laws. She teaches in mosques, universities, interfaith spaces, and lots of community spaces about Islam and what it truly says about women, about its law and money. And I have to say, when I was writing my own book, 30 Rights of Muslim Women, I could not find a single volume dedicated to women's financial rights. So I am deeply grateful for Dr. Goma's work, not just for fulfilling the gap on my bookshelf, but also in our collective scholarship and understanding. So, ironically, there is another little shared bond we have. We both started our careers as architects and designers before devoting ourselves to building communities instead of structures. So, Dr. Goma, welcome to Wise Women.
Thank you so much, Daisy. I first would like to thank you so much for having me on your program today.
Two of us were designers at one point in our lives. I want to ask you, what is it that about designers and architects and their way of thinking that makes them so effective at driving social change?
Okay, well, I think design thinking trains us to look at systems, not just objects or buildings, and how people move, how they interact, and experience their environment. When you apply that same mindset to social change, you begin to see human lives are interconnected structures. If one part is weak, say a woman's financial rights in a marriage, the whole system becomes unstable.
It's pure engineering.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. For me, my research found in my book, The Wealth of Women, it came from the same instinct to look at the foundation of family life with my strong faith that God is the best designers. I had to ask, is the structure sound? If it isn't, how do we rebuild it in a way that's faithful to Islam's blueprint for justice and balance?
I love the imagery of God being a designer. You and I kind of both became authors, and authors always begin with this idea: I need to write this book about this, whatever that is. Was that moment for you, and was it the stories of women you encountered, or the realization that the master designer who had designed everything for us, we're not following that design?
Well, of course, it's I've lived my entire life studying Islam. after kind of leaving architecture. And you know, Desi, my book's origin was my PhD research, and I turned it into a book. So the thought process started with a real problem that I perceived faced by my community, particularly from the women.
Mm.
So I would say that my first reasoning and need to do research on my book subject is because for more than 3 decades or 30 years of my life speaking to the Muslim community, I found that many women were confused about what their financial rights were under Islamic law. Um, I also found a need to enlighten even the non-Muslim community of how wealthy Islam made women and honored them in the Quran and the prophetic traditions from as early as the 7th century.
Mm.
And this is important since many times this fact has been misrepresented by our own Muslim males in our community, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I also felt that the need to share a problem that I feel all women in America and all over the world really are facing. And last but not least, I wanted to educate their men about their financial responsibilities towards their female family members and wives, so as to revive the original Islamic texts of the Quran and prophetic traditions, and their true meanings that were somehow neglected,
Yeah.
misinterpreted, and tended to vanish by the 8th century with the spread of Islam, where many new social customs subjugated women. Yeah.
In your book, you've kind of laid out women's financial life through different stages of their lives, like marriage, divorce, widowhood. What was the purpose of separating these phases rather than discussing women's finance in general?
A woman in Islam is supposed to be financially secure, um, in every stage. And I just picked some major stages in her life that she has to be fully financially secured during that time.
Yeah.
Uh,
So if we could get into each one of these and just highlight maybe one or two. So in marriage, for instance, when a woman gets married, she gets something called mahar. It's a marital gift, you know. And
right.
what is the purpose of that?
Every man who enters into matrimony in Islam, he is responsible to gift the woman he wishes to marry. And it's an obligation. It's a financial component of the marriage contract. It's an absolute, like whether it's delineated in the contract or whether actually written or just discussed. It's an absolute for her, so she cannot like it's her right, so she cannot lose it even if it's not mentioned. Scholars say that you must have what is called mahr al-mithl designated for her, which is a gift equal to women of comparable families, that she would be deserving during that time.
I know that this is where there's a lot of myth about, Muslim women get left hanging dry. And in divorce, what is she entitled to?
Well, you know, there's sometimes, because of the different schools of thought, sometimes there's some confusion that, for example, women who don't receive their mahr, they will only get it upon divorce. And this is just uh, like there's four classical schools of thought that most people belong to, but this is just some views compared to others. But actually, the stronger and view is that there needs to be a set time for any mahar that wasn't paid or any deferred mahar that like it was deferred. There needs to be a date when that mahar is going to be given to her. Now, I have a story of one woman, for example, who, she had her being like partial a diamond ring and partial money, $10,000 of money and partial is a ring. And once she got her ring, and then afterwards, she kept, her husband was really in very good financial condition. So she asked for her mahar, the money, or even partial. And he just basically kind of, said, you would not get this until we go through divorce, which is really not the correct mindset. This is the correct Islamic expectations is that there is a, a certain time, or deferment happens until he is financially well off and is able to pay off this mahar. It's not like automatic that you can't get it until you're divorced.
I
It's just
see.
this is just like they just give in case that once divorce happens, then this is like an absolute. You have to give her the mahar that you did not give her before.
So
Of course,
this is a common misconception even within the Muslim community. Many people don't
yes,
know. Yeah.
yes, yes. And I know one story of a girl who actually, and I mentioned that story in my book, but she actually, her parents knew that she was going to be financially very well off because of the type of work she was going to be doing. So they requested a large mahar, which was like 100,000. And probably a year or so after the marriage, the husband asked if she can forgive him for that, because he said, I don't think I can afford that. Now, in her mindset, she thought that he would have to, if he would have to, cons you know, he'd be afraid to divorce her because he would have to pay that amount. Like he's kind of,
Yeah.
his hands are tied.
Mhm.
So she didn't want him to feel like he has to remain in the marriage, so that he doesn't have to pay her that money. So she basically kind of gave it up because of that. And that's like, again, lack of understanding of the Islamic law, that
Mm.
no, it doesn't, have to, be like paid only at divorce. That on the contrary, it's something that is supposed to be paid once the man is able to pay it.
I'm so glad that you illuminated that the mahar can be paid anytime during the marriage. It doesn't just have to
It,
be,
yeah.
given at the time of divorce. And
And
so,
it's actually supposed to be. It's supposed to be paid once,
Mhm.
because deferment is only done because he can't afford right now.
So it's deferred until he's able to pay, not deferred
Exactly.
until the marriage contract ends,
E-
basically, right? That's what you're saying.
Exactly, exactly. Yes, and the reason certain schools of thought left that open is because based on certain situations, they leave it open because you never know when he would be able to pay it. So
Right.
I mean, what if he lost his job? And that's why, Daisy, I always said that in one of the resolutions of this problem that we're facing today, there needs to be a date that that the husband has to pay this amount Okay, so it's not left just open in the air. Like the Amani in one story, she just kept asking, "Can you give me partial anything?" And she needed the money, but
Mm.
she never. He said, "Nope,
Mm.
only upon divorce."
Another financial independence tool is, of course, inheritance and property ownership. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Every woman in Islam and every human being in Islam, they're born with the right to inherit, the right to earn, the right to keep their own earnings, the right to spend, the right to invest, rent, sell, buy. They have all these rights. It's part of their legal beings. Inheritance is hers and hers alone. She doesn't have to share it. She doesn't have to, pay part of the household, expenses with it. It's hers and hers alone. If she chooses any money really that she earns, whether it's her own personal money from inheritance, or whether it's her earnings from her work, or her parents gave her some money, or gifts or whatever, any of that money really is considered hers and hers alone. She's not in Islam, the man is responsible to provide for the woman he marries, and this is actually a contractual liability.
So we just spoke about it's a man's responsibility to take care of his wife, the household, and all the
Yeah,
expenses. But in reality, in practice, in many countries and many societies, women are now also working and
right.
sometimes even earning more. So then what becomes, how do we tackle this?
This doesn't necessarily change Islamic law. Like I understand that uh you're still under the liability of being provider in the household, whether she makes that money or whether she doesn't. What I found was very reasonable is that one of the schools of thought, and that is the Maliki school of thought, one of the doctrines that he had come up with, Imam Malik, is that a woman, she has the right to what is called kad wasi'aya. Kad wasi'aya is like labor and contribution,
Mm,
okay, based on Imam Malik. If a woman has been contributing to the household all her life, whether it's from her earnings or whether it's from her own personal money or from inheritance or such, in that case, Imam Malik is saying that if this marriage comes to an end, whether it is through divorce or whether it is through widowhood, like she loses her husband, she
yeah.
becomes rightful to have the estate. This is something that is actually has being put in practice right now in Morocco.
Mhm.
Sometimes even in Egypt, it started to become put in practice. But this kind of becomes a resolution to a new situation that's happening today. You are
Yeah.
responsible, you are liable, you have to be the provider. If something was to happen in general, whether kad wasaya or labor and contribution is not being enforced, that money that she spent in the household becomes a debt. In other
Yeah.
words,
Yeah.
if that is not being implemented, if kad wasaya is not being implemented, that money has becomes a debt. He owes it to her. If he was to die, it needs to come out of the estate separate from her inheritance rights.
Yeah.
If Yeah,
Wow, that's
so
so great. That's so that is like so in line with the legal practice here in the United States. When couples part and they look at the woman and they see the contribution that she has made to the household, maybe perhaps contributed to the home, mortgage, whatever she's done, as long as she's got her receipts and everything else, she's entitled to it, you know? And
exactly. And the
what
scholars,
I'm afraid of, Dr.
yeah,
Goma, is
yeah,
that most Muslim women do not keep tabs of this,
Yes.
and they do not even keep their bank accounts separate. They just, contribute to the husband, invest in the husband, pretty much, invest in his business, in
Yes.
his, like for instance, if a woman is working and she's earning a six-figure salary and the husband's just getting started, she's just pouring all the money into the household, building him with the hope that they will see, his business flourish. But she doesn't keep a record of anything. And if that marriage ends, it's just her word.
Daisy, that's why this becomes like scholars actually advise women involve someone in the family that's trustworthy, an imam in the community of that particular um uh you know um spending like that she has like she's involved in. And even, yes, she needs to start keeping tabs of what how much she's spending in the household. There needs to be alertness of this because it is a debt that he
Yeah.
owes her.
Yeah, yeah. I know a woman who was in a marriage for, more than 20 years, and when she got divorced, she had kept records of everything. I fixed the roof, it cost 9,000. I fixed the paving, it cost 14,000. I did the siding, that cost 16,000. And because it was his home, but because she had all these records of everything, she was able to get a higher settlement as a result of that.
And this sort of brings us into what is called invisible labor. It and that's why ked wasaya, that is labor and contribution, kind of comes into the picture and makes a lot of sense. This is something probably is a little bit shocking to many men and women alike, but all the schools of thought agree that a woman it's not her duty to her husband to do any domestic work, to clean the house, to do laundry, to cook, to all this stuff is done out of her own good heart.
Yeah,
She does it out, but it's not a duty, it's not an obligation, it's not wajib. But at the same time, she's been doing things in the household that is invisible labor that she deserves, she's not supposed to do in the first place, that she
yeah.
deserves to be paid for.
Well, so yeah, I mean, this is an interesting point because a friend of mine from Saudi Arabia coined this expression called monetizing motherhood, meaning if you just tabulated how much a woman's labor is worth, right? Everything from doctor's visits to feeding the child to nursing the child to taking care of the child during the day, daycare, and all this other stuff. With a minimum wage, I calculated it comes up to roughly 60,000 a year. And then if you take that over just 18 years of raising a child and sending them on, it
Yeah.
comes out to $1 million. A
Yeah.
million dollars that a woman could earn with a very minimum wage. So which gets me to the question of how you talk about women's financial rights don't just benefit women, they uplift their family, community, and entire society. Um, and how does this translate into the social well-being of everyone?
If if I could just add one more thing to that invisible labor issue, I just wanted to add a story of the stories of the women in my book. Sakina's, she had a husband. Sakina moved into her new home. She had everything, but there was from day one of moving into her new home, she found that her mother-in-law moved right in with them from day one of the marriage. And she didn't know where this came from. And when she questioned him, he said, well, I asked your parents, and your parents said that that would be all right. Sakina suffered all her life, even though she had everything. There's so many things that go under private household, a home in a secure place with all the needs inside of it, products, furniture that's customary, but also to have a place that she doesn't have to live with anyone. And a lot of women don't have that right to even say yes or no to this, and they're just coerced into having husbands like in-laws or family members living in her household. She was taking care of an elderly lady all her life. She couldn't go anywhere or socialize or take part of, social, activities. And when his daughter was about to get married, a man came to ask for her hand of marriage, and he had everything going for him material wise, financially. But he said, I have just one condition, that my mother lives with me. And at
Mm.
that moment, the husband said, absolutely not. And Sakina said, for the first time, my husband recognized that my wife was someone's daughter too.
Yeah,
And
and to
so,
put that burden on his own daughter, he didn't see it.
yes, he
Yeah.
he he wouldn't allow it. So, but it was a financial uh right
Hmm.
that she lost all her life. Now I think back to your question.
When we talk about financial empowerment,
Yeah.
what does, in your opinion, that look like in a day-to-day life of a woman, her family, and her community? Ideally.
Okay. When a woman, um, financial empowerment shows up in many small things. When a woman knows and controls her own finances, uh, her mahar, her savings, her income, she can make choices without fear. She can buy something for her children without asking permission. She can, help her parents when they're in need, or even start a small business if she wanted to. That confidence changes the tone in her home. She participates in family decision making. She's more at peace, and her children see, you know a model of dignity and fairness. Financial empowerment isn't just about money, but it's about emotional security.
Yeah.
It's about, mutual respect and social stability. Um,
Yeah.
so
I mean, I'm going to share a little story because this is what I discovered when I was a child. And many of us get gold as part of our a gift that our parents give us as a way to invest in their daughters and to take into the marriage, not
yeah,
just a marital gift from the husband, but also from the parents. And my mother had like loads and loads of gold with her. And my father was just a civil servant, and he was on a fixed income. And he used to come home, and that money would get spent in no time because by the time they sent all the kids to school, uniforms, food, and
or
everything else, it was
yeah,
gone. It was that extra money that my mother had, that bangle that always came out that got sold at that moment when that extra money was needed. And I'll never forget the story that once a guy came to my mother and told her that there was an almond grove, um, which bears this fruit every year, and it was for sale. And so he came over to her without even asking anybody anything. She took out her big, giant bangle and just gave it to him. She said, buy it. Years later, when my parents really were in a financial distress because, daughters were getting married and blah, blah, blah had to happen, they sold that land. And I mean, I don't know, it's probably hundredfold of what she bought it for. But that was the financial independence that my mom had. And my mom never really worked. That really left a very deep impression on me, the ability of a woman to make her choices and to improve the standard of the family.
I absolutely agree with you. I do want to tell you that, like, from my research and from the 21 women that I interviewed, that I spent almost interviewing these women for almost 2 years. I I um I ultimately I felt that when women were able to retain and gain some financial independence within their homes, that they were happier, not just happier, but they were empowered to participate inside their household and outside their household. And I want to give some examples. Like there was one participant, Tanya. She when she first married, her husband lived in her private, owned furnished condo
Mm.
for almost a year. Um, um, and um, until he was able to provide her with a home of his own. So once that happened, she was able to sell her condo and pay off her college loans and credit card debt. And years later, Tanya found out from an imam in the community. He clarified for her that her earnings were actually hers and hers alone. And that was a turning point for Tanya. And it gave her really financial freedom. And with her income, she bought a car, she traveled abroad, she still chose to contribute to groceries in the household, and to an orphan charity. So for Tanya, the shift from obligatory spending to giving voluntarily transformed her sense of power and independence. Um, Another participant, Suzanne, she linked her material happiness to her financial independence, um, uh, uh, and her husband's support for her humanitarian work with refugees. Another participant, Fariha, she enjoyed one particular benefit of earning her own money, and that was being able to generously give a charity from her personal money, um, as a way of investing in her hereafter. So,
Yeah.
I mean, this is just, yeah, this is just uh, different stories, and these were the women that were really actually happy and felt empowered in their homes and inside and out, really.
Yeah, it's also a spiritual growth because every time you give, you contribute to society and you do good deeds and it earns you benefit in your afterlife. So, are there any misconceptions that you encounter within the Muslim community, like some jarring ones that stand out to you that people know nothing about these rights?
All the misconceptions are because these like men, they grew up in a certain household where there were certain habits that were like they saw this is how their dad treated their mother, so they felt like they do the same things with their wives, so they just repeat.
Yeah,
If the mother had any money, if she inherited, she just the husband, hey, he took control over that money because he's her caretaker, so he is better prepared to take care of that money, and
yeah,
women slowly just lost any control over uh, what they owned, and
yeah.
I think it's a frustration. There was so many women frustrated in in the stories. Like there was Sophia, like she and her husband, they were earning similar incomes, but all the funds went into this joint account that she couldn't access without his permission,
No
like
way.
without his consent.
That's a
So,
no-no.
so what is like this fake name of joint account that I'm not allowed to touch? The joint account covered all the expenses. of the household, but also at his demand, regular transfers to his family overseas. Okay. Um, and after she learned, Sophia happened to be a convert, but after she learned later on about her Islamic rights, she suggested a separate account for herself.
Right.
And he threatened that if you were to do that, he would withhold his IRA and their joint home equity.
Mm.
So that's just the kind of frustrations that some of these women went through. Dana, another participant in a similar situation, she said, no caller. She said from day one of the marriage, she was shamed into sharing her paycheck. There was no question that her money was going into the joint account that,
Mm. Yeah.
again, she
Yeah.
wasn't supposed
Yeah.
to touch. She
Yeah.
also, like, talking about invisible labor. Dana actually worked without pay as her husband's career assistant, handling his memos, his bookkeeping, his presentations, until one day he rose to the top positions in his field, making $250,000 annually. And so, subhanallah, I mean, she was just that invisible labor, that woman who took care of things and was never paid for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
These
So this is so common, but it's not about women that don't know their rights. I know many women who are contemporary women, modern women, Muslim women, very successful women who refuse to have separate bank accounts. And I'm like, okay, these women are totally empowered, totally can make their own decisions, and yet for some reason they're like, no, we need to have a joint account. And I said, okay, you can have a joint account for something, but majority of your own earnings should go onto your own account. And then so
Yeah.
I don't know how to change this. Is it's just how women are socialized, I believe.
um
And they could be in the West. That even Western women are socialized to think that way. It's nothing to do with Muslim women.
so it's true, very, very true.
Yeah. So, if we could just broaden this concept a little bit and recognize the economic value of women's work. Do you have any thoughts on what we need to do as a society, not just as Muslims, so that women can have more financial independence?
Well, I think that first of all, there needs to be there's a lot of work in that scholars or fiqh scholars, uh, those that derive Islamic law from the Sharia, constantly to try to see how, like, many laws need to be put into practice today in our modern times. And I think really the most important uh, thing that could bring change and good change to women's economic situation is education. Education for both men and women. They need to make an effort to know what is rightfully theirs from the perspective of, I think, the scholars. There needs to be education to the imams themselves that perform marriage ceremonies. They need to speak about how zimma, that every woman enters into a marriage contract as an individual legal person with a legal identity, uh, as a person who is supposed to, keep her inheritance and keep her earnings. The marriage contract is a very heavy covenant that Allah spoke about in the Quran as being mithaqan ghalidha, like a very solemn covenant that needs to be abided by. And
Mm.
it is a liability. There are material liabilities that come right along with the marriage contract, and that is to, to be the maintainer of the household, to spend on the woman all her life, all through her marriage and on her children.
So, I mean, if a Muslim woman or her family wanted to take the first step towards understanding and exercising her financial right, what steps are you suggesting for them that they take besides obviously learning their rights? Is there something specific that you are recommending that they do?
I mean, they could definitely, like, they could do prenups. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if they were about to marry, they could do prenups, and those will be separate from the marriage contract, that they keep their earnings, whatever money they make in, during this matrimony, this marriage, that it's theirs. Marriage counseling needs to happen beforehand, so that like with an Islamic scholar that can really explain the rights of each individual, each gender, so that everyone respects one another, and gives their due right, their wealth, due right of wealth, and everything else really to their partner.
Yeah. And I would add separate bank accounts, right? We already
Ab-
discussed.
ab- Absolutely. And I think it's really easy to do that at the beginning, whereas after the marriage, after a couple of years of the marriage, 5 years, it's very difficult to
Yeah.
say, hey, I'm going to open a brand new account.
Yeah.
It's very offensive for
Yeah.
the men, take it very offensively. They don't like that.
Yeah, things have to be negotiated before the actual marriage takes place because that is the time of negotiation and that is the time
Absolutely.
when people need to come to an understanding of the kind of marriage they want to have. And I would also say that women really need to fight for their inheritance because many people are foregoing their inheritance. They're like, oh, well, it's all the way back in the home country. They can have it. My uncles can have it. No, it's your inheritance. You can do so much good with it, right?
Exactly, exactly. And you never know when this will be your social security, because
Yeah.
uh you never know. You might be happy today and tomorrow you're divorced and you have nothing. And a lot of these women suffered um after giving their entire life to the marriage, and they ended up without any financial security when divorce happened.
Given the suggestions that you just made, do you see attitudes turning around in the next 10 to 20 years?
I really think that it's going to be slow
Mhm.
for a certain generation. So the women that I interviewed were between 45 and 65. I think that generation is that particular age group, that's going to take a while. I hope people read my book,
Mhm.
because that would really, it's a dictionary of financial rights. It's found on Amazon, in Barnes and Noble, in Walmart. It's on in Islamic books like Mecca. So it's a start. It's a
Yeah,
start. But I
yeah.
do think that the generation, like if I was to do new research, I would probably go to the age group beforehand, which is my daughter's age group, which is probably like maybe from like 25 to 40. That age group. I think that age group, I feel like that the men in that age group, because maybe they were born and raised here, and they really base all of their thoughts on what the faith, the text says, and they like to follow it. Like they're not allowing culture to get into the way. And I think that is why that generation is ahead of us.
Yeah. So, dear listeners, you heard that the book can be purchased almost anywhere. And you also know that financial empowerment is also faith in action. And when women acquire financial rights, entire families, communities, and societies prosper. This is on record. This is not just for Muslim communities. This has been already recorded, and you can see reports all over the world that when women flourish, societies prosper. So I want to thank you, Dr. Goma, for shining a
You.
light on the wealth of a woman, for writing the book, and I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you
And
so
any last words you would like to say?
God bless your heart. Thank you so much for having me. And I really do hope that um, that people are more aware of this subject because it is not very well known and it needs to be explored further.
So, listeners, if you liked what you heard, please hit the like and subscribe button. And until next time, I'm your host, Daisy Khan. Stay blessed. Thank you for joining me on Wise Women. If something stirred in you today, don't let it stop here. Share this episode with someone who needs it. Reflect on what resonated for you. And definitely plant one seed of change, however small. Remember, you do matter. And your actions have a ripple effect. But none of us can rise alone. To explore more resources and ways to get involved, do visit my website, daisycon.com. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, because every click is your way of amplifying this message to others. Wisdom isn't just heard, my friends, it's lived. So let's live it. Until next time, stay wise and stay rooted.